delegates who are present could take their places, please. In terms of the order of the day, we're going to continue with the report that we were considering, Report 3A. Just a word with regard to that. I know that in some ways there is a bit of awkwardness because of the timing in terms of it was only posted this morning. Some of the other reports were already posted last night. Ordinarily, as we mentioned earlier, we will try to get those reports to you well in advance, etc., but it's just part of the reality of a Monday morning session. We are going to continue it, and one of the reasons or the rationale for to continue studying and moving forward with this report is the fact that the materials in the report are essentially similar to what was in the agenda for Synod, so there is not a significant difference in that regard, and so no major surprises. Plus, we are going to work in a rather leisurely way so that if you need time to reflect on it and we needed time to read through, we're reading the grounds, for example. We're not just reading the recommendation and say the grounds have been before you, you're all familiar with that, so we're not rushing that through. So it is a bit regrettable. We recognize that and acknowledge it, that we haven't had this posted for a significantly longer period of time, but for continuity, we're going to continue on with that discussion. A couple of other announcements. The guest internet access is now fixed. Some had difficulty registering with the guest internet. That apparently is up and running. Also a reminder, and we mentioned that earlier, but just another reminder, if you are speaking, again, please mention your name and the classes that you are representing. That's particularly appreciated by the banner staff because they look for those juicy quotes and they want to know who was it that said that and so on. So if you are standing up to be quoted in the banner, make sure that you say your name and your classes. Also, just want to call your attention to the fact that there are times when we move along fairly quickly. And that happened this morning as well. And sometimes when we get that momentum and we're moving downhill, not climbing slowly uphill, maybe we move a little bit too fast, and at times we might overlook things. That's not to say that the discussion went too fast, but we might move on to the next recommendation too fast without pausing, for example, to say thank you. That definitely happened this morning. In Committee 1-4, we passed a recommendation that had to do with imagining ministry. And again, as in so many of the other items of our agenda, there's a vast amount of work that took place behind the scenes on that. And I apologize for not stopping at that point to say a very special word of thanks to Ben Van de Zande and to all who worked with him. Ben has been tireless, and I know that from contact with Ben. Ben has been tireless in terms of the time and the miles that he has put on behind the scenes with that regard. Meeting with various classes, sometimes racing from one classes to another to try to have the discussion groups, the hearing groups that were conducted. And so a great deal of energy was put into that by Ben, by many others, and I think that we need to recognize that publicly and say a word of thanks. Thank you, Ben. Similarly, we passed work that Roger Rice would have loved to have been present here for, but it came up fairly quickly on our agenda, and we moved right along. And there's another name that really deserves some public recognition and some public applause. I don't know if Mark is wanting to say a little bit more about that too in terms of the input and the feedback there. Mark, if you want to do that, you can do that either now or later on when you're reporting or whatever. But I do want to make a public recognition of the work of Mark Rice, or Mark Rice, I mean, yeah. So, yeah. Mark has spoken to Mark at break. Is he here?
No, he's at the office, but he'll be back at noon.
He will be back. When he's back, somebody please alert us so that we can give a round of applause in his presence. Okay, we're going to continue with Advisory Committee 3A report and noting the comments that we made in terms of tempo and the way that we're going to process that. Let's all work together on that. Let's work in good faith and continue on with our work.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're at 3C and recommendation 2. That Synod approve the following addition to Church Order Supplement Article 23A and then to be inserted after the opening paragraph in the supplement in Article 23A. Before a person who will serve as the solo pastor of an emerging or an organized church is examined for a position as a commissioned pastor, that person, in cooperation with classes, shall develop and complete a contextualized learning plan adopted by classes and approved by the Candidacy Committee. Ordinarily, the learning plan would include an introduction to CRC church order, CRC history, CRC ministry, CRC creeds and confessions, Reformed hermeneutics, and an introduction to the discipline and the art of preaching. Grounds: this ensures that those who provide primary spiritual leadership in the Christian Reformed Church congregations have been adequately trained in the basic denominational information that the Church expects of its primary spiritual leaders. B, this enables the classes to have flexibility in the training mechanisms it uses for commissioned pastors, as a given learning plan can include many elements and learning experiences. And C, this balances local flexibility and contextual sensitivity with a denominational voice via the Candidacy Committee, which is advantageous for consistency and denominational awareness among leaders in the Christian Reformed Church. I so move, Mr. Chair.
It's moved and supported. We're ready for discussion on recommendation 2, found on page 4 of the printed report, with the grounds carrying over on page 5. Discussion on the motion that Synod approve the following addition to Church Order Supplement Article 23A. Anyone want to speak to that motion? You should be on the speaker queue. Okay. I see the others standing up. Do we have an issue with our speaker queue? IT advice here. Do we have an issue with our speaker queue? Our speaker queue does not show anyone at this point. We're going to recognize the speakers that are standing at the mics as our IT assistants takes a look at that. Jose, go ahead.
Jose Reyes, Classes, Arizona. I speak in favor of this, but can you give us some clarity as to this learning plan? Will that plan be limited to the EPMC program, or is there going to be some viability of implementing something else within the classes? Personally, I have benefited greatly from the EPMC program, but I just want to make sure that there is not going to be a misunderstanding saying that that the classes or the church itself can implement its own program separate from the EPMC.
Mr. Chair, I'll let David respond to that. He'll be more.
David?
The EPMC program is a program specifically for ministers of the Word, those who would be candidates for ministers of the Word that go to other seminaries. It's an accredited program with a tuition cost, and most classes support those students going toward candidacy and minister of the Word. What's on the floor is a recommendation for a learning plan for those who become commissioned pastors. And the program that is selected by the classes in consultation with the given person would be approved by the Candidacy Committee. We talked with an advisory committee of this and said, well, how will you know if that program is really worthwhile or not? The CLASIS is going to have to make judgment through its committee and such. If a CLASIS wants to use a Calvin Seminary program, a CLASIS is free to do that. Certainly, the Candidacy Committee, as it approves of a learning plan, would approve of something that's offered through Calvin Seminary. More likely for commission pastors, it will be one-on-one instruction or small group instruction, or many of the classes have LDNs and such. But we'll make sure that what they learn in their LDN also includes the elements that are listed there, because many LDNs currently, leadership development networks in the various classes and regions, many of those programs do not address these particular matters. They probably would be glad to address these particular matters, or the learning plan with these particular matters could supplement what's done in the leadership development network and such. Does that answer your question?
Thank you, David. I saw Jonathan at the mic earlier. Did you still want to speak, Jonathan, before the speaker? It's appropriate that Jonathan and David speak in close succession to each other. David just finished. He was in line before the speaker queue could be rectified, so
I'm favorable for, this.
put your hand on the mic higher, the mic itself. This is hands-on technology.
Sure, okay. I'm learning, okay.
Yeah, we all
I'm
are.
favorable for this, motion. Actually, I'm glad, we deal these kind of things, in this flow. And especially, candidate committee, talking about commissioner pastors. I want to say something about this learning plan, not only for commissioner pastors. I hope it will be extended to, pastors and leaders, office bearers, all the churches, especially for ethnic minority churches. So because it's very so important things, for continue education plan for they are involving together on our umbrella together. So for future or from now, it's going on slowly, but as soon as possible, all the our especially ethnic minority leaders, pastors, including elders or deacons, they can have this kind of learning plan, okay, on the all our denomination levels. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Next speaker that I have on my list is Nick Monsma. Nick, did you still? Okay. Then John Koiker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. John Koiker, Classes Heartland. There's one question I have concerning the note that usually a change in church order has to be ratified in a subsequent synod. And an exception is being made in this particular case. I don't know how many times exceptions are made. I would just be curious to know if this is a one-time thing or if this can be done more than once.
That, Mr. Chairman, that's actually applies to the third recommendation, so maybe I'll answer that question then.
Okay. Rick.
My name is Rick Van Manen. I'm a commissioned pastor in Classis Alberta North, and I'm in favor of the motion, but I would like some clarification in terms of how the learning process is going to happen. It sounds in the motion that the person who wishes to be commissioned as a commissioned pastor or ordained as a commissioned pastor is required to fully complete the learning plan before they can be examined by their classes. And is that the case? Because it seems to me that in the rapidly changing ministry situations on the ground, it might be better if the person could be commissioned and then proceed through the learning plan while they are doing their ministry. Thank you.
The answer to that question is that the intention is that the learning plan as specified would have suitable and appropriate elements to it that are completed before they're examined. If the plan also included continuing education, we'd all say hallelujah, because ministers of the word also need to have a continuing education learning plan. But this motion is saying that before a person is examined, they really need to go through some learning and orientation. And at present, some do, and that learning plan then would simply, it's already happening, but this allows some standardization to occur.
Okay. Seeing no more names on the speaker queue, assume that you're ready to vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, the same. It's carried.
Okay, Mr. Chair, then just on a note prior to recommendation 3, the advisory committee agrees with the assessment of the candidacy committee that these two proposals are not significant in nature and can therefore be approved by Synod 2013 without waiting an additional year, and that's just directly out of the agenda as we had it on page 211. As is usually required for the ratification of a change to the church order, the advisory committee therefore recommends, and this is recommendation 3, that Synod judges that this is not a substantial change to the church order and as such will not require ratification by Synod 2014 in accordance with dictates of Article 47. And the grounds, the change and ratification recommended clarify a situation that has caused confusion and does not substantially change our polity, and B, changes to the church order supplement are not subject to ratification by a subsequent synod. I so move, Mr. Chair.
It's moved and supported. Discussion on recommendation 3.
And may I address the issue of exception? We don't see this as really being an exception. This is a clarification, and so it does not substantially change our policy. And so we just lay this before you. Really don't know how often exceptions like this happen. We didn't study the historical record.
Okay, Tim is on the speaker queue. Close
just
to the mic.
a question, a clarification that was raised earlier.
Name and
Oh, sorry,
classes?
Tim Howard, Classes Zealand. As far as the changes, would this apply also for the changes to Article 23A then in the primary church order?
It's the only change that's there, right? We
Okay.
added to the supplement. We add.
Yeah.
There are two. There's the 23A. That's the change to the church order. Okay, that would normally have to be ratified by the subsequent synod, but the insertion into the church order supplement is not subject to that same rule. So we're just saying there are two things that are happening here. The change to the church order, we don't think it's substantive in nature and therefore doesn't require ratification next year. And the matter of addition to the church order supplement is not subject to such ratification.
Okay, then, Mr. Chairman, my question was, the concern was raised that we were going away from thinking of commission pastors as elders, and maybe you could clarify whether that's a change that would be occurring now or not.
We'll get to that in recommendation.
Well, the
I don't
dropping
know,
of the
but-
elder part in the church order, Article 23A.
David will talk about that.
Maybe David, yeah.
Sure. Thank you, Tim. I suppose that would be specifically the point in nature, is removing the word elder, not thinking of commission pastors in terms of elder. Is that a substantial change, or is that simply a change in nomenclature? It's the belief of the Candidacy Committee that it is simply a change in nomenclature. In practice, we have had a 30-year history now of evolution to where these persons serving in this office are considered more and more and more and more as pastors. And so simply church order change at this point is reflecting a reality that the church has had lots of years to adapt to and has been approving as each of these changes have been happening.
Thank you, David. Kathy?
Kathy Smith, faculty advisor. I think the motion is a little unclear in that the word "this" really refers to recommendation number 1 about the church order change, which if Synod decides is not substantive, then the churches don't need prior opportunity to consider it and can approve it now, and then it would take effect immediately. the learning plan, which is a change to the supplement in recommendation 2, as was noted, doesn't need that kind of approval. So ground A speaks to the recommendation about the church order change in Article 23A. Ground B really speaks to a different recommendation. So it seems to me that some clarity would be helpful in the motion, that it is about recommendation 1 only to change church order Article 23A.
I think it's friendly, Mr. Chair, to say that Synod judged that recommendation 1 is not a substantial change instead of the word this.
Okay, the reporter sees it as a friendly amendment, and to substitute recommendation 1 for the word this. Ordinarily, when we get amendments and so on, they should be in written form and given to our recording administrative assistants in that format, and we're going to try to use that format, but if we can catch that at this point, so the wording would now read that Synod judged that recommendation 1 is not a substantial change to the church order.
It's actually, it's recommendation 1.
Okay, carry on the discussion. John Vanderhyde.
Bill Vanderhyde. I go by my middle name. Class is Heartland, and I'm not really speaking to the amendment. I've got on the queue before that came up, so am I in order?
The amendment was a friendly one, so
Yeah, the amendment was simply ruled
Okay.
as a friendly amendment.
Then, Mr. Chairman, I speak against the amended motion. For 30 years, the church has had this situation, but as elder, you take out the word elder, you're introducing another office. Is commissioned pastor an ordained minister? Is that commissioned pastor an elder? No, commissioned pastor is now to be thought of as a commissioned pastor. Well, that introduces, practically speaking, in the life of the church, another office. That's a substantial change. We may have been living with things that way for 30 years, but it's a substantial change to the way the church has to operate. And I think you'll have less pushback if we recognize that and allow the normal process of the next synod to ratify it. Then you will get from churches responding and saying, we didn't even get a chance to comment on this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
William.
May I respond, Mr. Thank you, William. Article 2 says the church recognizes the offices of minister of the word, elder, deacon, and commissioned pastors. These offices differ from each other only in mandate and task, not in dignity and honor. We've recognized this office for the last 30 years. What we've done is simply change the names of it. But the office is there and is recognized.
Further discussion? No speakers in the queue. We have the motion. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, the same. That is carried.
Mr. Chair, recommendation 4, that Synod refer synodical deputies, we left a 0 or an O out of synodical. Synodical deputies, church councils, and church visiting teams and classes of the CRCNA, classes of the CRCNA, to the banner article, The Scarlet Number, that's the name of the banner article, on uses of Church Order Article 17 that appeared in the March 2012 issue, and encourage the churches to recognize that there are many uses of Article 17A that indicate a healthy relationship between pastors and churches. This is just a pastoral concern that sometimes when it comes on, the material that the search committees look at, if you've been separated from your church under Article 17, it can be seen as a real strike against you, and that's not necessarily the case. So there are many uses of Article 17A that indicate a healthy relationship between pastors and churches, and I so move.
Okay, recommendation 4 is before us. Is it supported? It's open for discussion. You've heard the commentary from the reporter on that, the intent of it, the pastoral concern on that. Recognizing the high incidences of Article 17 situations and what might be perceived as something of a stigma that almost automatically gets attached to the word Article 17, recognition that there are various contexts, reasons, not all of which are negative. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Contrary, the same. It is carried.
Recommendation 5, that Synod remind all churches, pastor search committee, counselors of vacant churches, and church visitors of our covenantal commitment to each other as expressed in Church Order Article 8, and then its supplement. Churches are to engage in meaningful pastoral search conversations with pastors ordained outside the CRC and the RCA only after consulting with the candidacy committee. Grounds. Article 8 requirement that churches engage in a sustained realistic search, supplement Article 8E1, among current candidates and ordained CRC and RCA pastors has been disregarded by some churches in recent years. B, the CRC currently has a large number of candidates and available ordained ministers of the Word, making it all the more crucial that we keep our commitment to them. And Church Article 8 does not prohibit congregations searching for a pastor from enlisting the pastoral services of qualified godly individuals, but it does so in an ordered way that is of benefit to the denomination, our seminary, our congregations, and the pastors who serve us. I so move, Mr. Chair.
Moved and supported. Is there discussion on recommendation 5? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, the same. Is carried.
Then we'll move to recommendation 8, having already done 6 and 7. That Synod approve the work of the candidacy committee and declaration of need for affiliation under Church Order Article 8C for the following persons, and you see the names listed there, and so I so move.
Recommendation 8 is moved and supported. It's open for discussion. There are no speakers. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, the same. Carried.
Recommendation 9, that Synod approve the following addition to the church order as Supplement 45B3. Commission pastors serving in emerging churches and associate staff positions may be delegated as elder delegates to Synod and nominated to serve in other denominational functions where a person must normally be an elder. Grounds. This statement clarifies confusion that may result from the deletion of the word elder in Church Order Article 23A, makes explicit the present understanding with regard to the participation of commissioned pastors at Synod and in denominational functions. The statement is parallel to the already existing statement in Church Order Article Supplement 45B2, which allows a certain cadre of commissioned pastors to be delegated to Synod and to serve in denominational functions. And C, this statement ensures that commissioned pastors not referred to in Church Order Supplement 45B2 are also eligible to serve the church as delegates to Synod and in other denominational functions. I so move.
Recommendation 9 has been moved and supported. Is open for discussion. John?
Mr. Chairman, I speak,
Class?
John Bauer, of Classes Toronto. I'm a church planter in Milton, Ontario, just to the west of Toronto. I served in an established church for 10 years. And I speak against this motion in part what the brother was mentioning earlier when we started on this journey. I haven't sort of formulated a suggestion for a difference, but I would speak against it on the basis that I believe that commissioned pastors who are serving in an emerging church need to be recognized as pastors by Synod as well. Having been an established church, having been a church planter, I see that regardless of whether it's emerging or not, these leaders are preaching, they're doing pastoral care, they're doing all the things that an established church pastor would do, but doing it with a breadth and a depth, I have to confess, that I never tried to wrestle with as an established church pastor. So I think we do commission pastors in emerging churches a disservice by not seating them as pastors at Synod. I recognize the commissioned pastors who are serving a narrow function in a church. It makes sense in some ways for them to be elders, but I speak against the motion in its current form.
Next speaker,
Mr.
George.
Chairman, may I just address this matter here?
Certainly,
I
David.
have great appreciation for those comments and would observe that the Synod could really address that concern in one of two ways. One of those ways is the way that is before us, and the other way would be to change Article 45B, 45, the supplement to Article 45 under B2. Under B2, it currently says commission pastors serving as solo pastors of organized congregations may be sent as ministerial delegates and nominated to serve and so forth. If that read instead that commissioned pastors, any commissioned pastors may be sent as minister delegates, and so that would address the concern that was raised by that delegate. The candidacy committee did not seek to go that direction. We sought to go the direction as stated in this motion, because up to this point, many classes send commissioned pastors as elder delegates. They've been able to do so because commissioned pastors are acknowledged as elders. We've wanted to make room, recognizing in this change, so that Synod 2009 added that statement number 2 of the supplement just stated there. We did not at that point go so broad as to say all commissioned pastors. If Synod would want to go that broad, they surely may. But up to this point, commissioned pastors have been able to go to Synod, any of them, but only those that were as solo pastors of organized congregations have been able to go as minister delegates.
Okay. George.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask if the advisory committee had considered this matter of how commissioned pastors should be eligible for delegation to Synod, particularly in light of the comment from the candidacy committee on page 212 of the the agenda for Synod that talks about the present practice that has those commissioned pastors acting as solo pastors of emerging churches delegated, dishonoring those commissioned pastors relative to their recognition as pastors, and the fact of delegating commissioned pastors in general as elders, adding to the problem of clergy pastor dominance at Synod. Their words, not mine. But I wondered if the advisory committee considered making a recommendation on that now, and it seems to me at least to say that commissioned pastors serving as solo pastors of emerging congregations, as well as serving as solo pastors of established congregations, should be delegated to Synod as ministerial delegates rather than elders delegates, would be a small step towards solving those two problems that the candidacy committee had noted in their report to us. And perhaps the other question of commissioned pastors serving in more limited roles in established congregations could be taken up at a later Synod.
Thank you, George. To be very honest, the advisory committee did not spend a lot of time on that matter of what we could describe broadly as pastor domination of Synod, because there are more pastors than elder delegates. And when you bring commission pastors into the mix, because most of the time they're put in the elder category. That aggravates that problem or that issue or that reality that there are fewer elders than clergy or ordained ministers of the word and commission pastors. The suggestion that you make that at this point there only be one simple change, and that commission pastors serving as solo pastors of an organized or an emerging congregation may be sent, that would broaden the window a little bit. Currently, we have just closed the window significantly because we've removed the word in Article 23A that they're acknowledged as elders, and so all of a sudden classes and commission pastors themselves are kind of in limbo. May they go to synod? And right now, our rules say only those who are commission pastors serving as a solo pastor in an organized congregation. There are many of the commission pastors' positions that are associate staff. Probably more commission pastors are associate staff than rather solo staff. And I just say that as an observation for the synod to consider. And the candidacy committee did spend quite a bit of time on this. They have been seeking to allow commission pastors, whether they're in associate positions or solo positions, to participate in our process as much as the classis wants to use them.
John?
John Quaker, Classes Heartland. I speak against this recommendation in its present form. I would like to see it sent back to the advisory committee for revision. As an elder in Classes Heartland, we have several emerging churches with solo commissioned pastors. Right now, when you register, you can only register as a pastor delegate or an elder delegate. I can foresee a possibility of having 3 pastor delegates, one of which is by nomenclature called an elder, and only 1 elder delegate. And that's just not fair. Sorry.
Mr. Chair, we do have to keep in mind some of our recognitions. There's a difference between an emerging church and an organized church. And there's a difference between theologically trained pastor and a commissioned pastor. I mean, there are some things that restrict the scope of our conversations and our options. And keeping those things in mind, we think that this helps clarify the situation.
Cal?
Calvin Davies, Classes Chatham. Maybe I'm jumping the gun, in which case, Mr. Chair, you'll have to tell me, but we're going to be receiving a report from the diaconate, which may compound the problem, because one of the recommendations, if I'm not mistaken, is to ask in the future at synods that deacons also be seated. And while in principle I am certainly in agreement with that, what we're suggesting now could result in the possibility of having 2 pastors from a classis, one commissioned pastor being seated, if he's a solo pastor, as an elder, and then a deacon, which would really mean from that classis we would have no people on council who are being classified, who has been classified and sent here as elders. I see that as problematic, and in that sense I'm agreeing with the former speaker at this microphone.
There are no further speakers. Don't want to rush you on this. We've had a good discussion, variety of opinions. I see no further speakers, so I'm going to give you the opportunity to vote on this. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, the same. That has carried.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And then recommendation 9, that simply that Synod take note of the various initiatives and challenges identified by the Candidacy Committee as noted in this report. We've already struggled with some of those initiatives and challenges, and they keep them in front of them, and no doubt we'll hear more from them in subsequent synods. So I so move.
It's moved and seconded that Synod take note of the various initiatives and challenges. Discussion on that? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, the same. That is carried. And in doing so, that's a good reminder for us to say thank you to the Candidacy Committee for the work that you have put into this. So receive the appreciation of Synod for your work. We carry on.
Okay, item 4, sermons for reading services. The material is the report on page 239. We just have a number of observations prior to making our recommendation. Number 1, it would be helpful to those seeking information about sermon availability if the full website address would be supplied in reports to Synod. Number 2, in an age of technological development, it is time to offer sermons on video to be shown instead of supplying sermons to be read. And 3, more could be done to contextualize the sermons for the local setting. Of particular concern are sermons that can be used in multi-ethnic churches and settings. So those are just some observations that we wanted to put on the table of the committee, and that our recommendation is that Synod approve the work of the committee and encourage the churches to avail themselves to the sermons for reading services on the Christian Reformed Church website. So moved, Mr. Chair.
Okay, that motion is moved and supported. It's open for discussion. We would even allow a testimony or two if there is someone here who says we use the resources made available by the committee for sermons for reading services. If you've been blessed by that and you want to stand up and say so, we would even appreciate hearing that. Any discussion on this recommendation? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, the same. It's carried.
Then we have a number of reports from our...
Let's just say thank you to those who work on that committee for reading services, for your diligence in finding materials and making sure that they get into that stage of editing and to that point of dissemination for use within the churches. So thank you very much to that committee.
And there are a number of reports from educational institutions. Report from Dordt College is on page 243-44 of your agenda. We have 3 recommendations. That Synod receive the report for information, taking appreciative note of the expanded programs at Dordt College, including construction management, actuarial science, and Christianity and pop culture. I so move.
It's moved and supported. That's recommendation number 1, found on page 8 in the printed material under Dordt College. Discussion on recommendation 1. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, the same. It's carried.
Recommendation 2, that Synod take note of the appreciation expressed by the college for the financial support that has been received. I so move.
Moved and supported. Discussion on recommendation 2. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, the same. It's carried.
And then 3, that Synod acknowledge the inauguration of Dordt's 4th president, Dr. Eric Hoekstra, in the fall of 2012. I so move.
It's moved and supported. Discussion of recommendation 3. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, the same. That's carried. We'll go on to the further institutions, educational institutions, and at the end of this, we are going to have a time of appreciation for all of the educational institutions that are reflected here. And we have a particular time set aside for a report from Calvin College and so on. But our closing prayer before we break for our lunch will incorporate, I trust, a prayer of thanksgiving, among other things, but a prayer of thanksgiving for all of these institutions that are dear to us and so significant to our denomination. We're going to carry on, and we're going to go through all of these academic institutions and then give proper thanks at the end of our session this morning. But carry on then.
Okay. With regard to the Institute for Christian Studies material as you see listed, recommendation 1, that Synod receive the report for information, noting the appointments of Dr. Tom and Donna Voltheis, who have been selected to divide the roles of the presidency between them. I so move.
It's moved and supported. Is there any discussion on recommendation 1 under section 6? All in favor, please say aye. Contrary, the same. It's carried.
And recommendation 2, that Synod note with interest the development of a new research center, the Center for Philosophy, Religion, and Social Ethics, that's taking place at the ICS. I so move.
It's moved and supported. Any discussion? If we're taking note with interest, we need to demonstrate that with enthusiasm as we say aye. So all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, the same. Our interest is noted.
With regard to King's University College, the recommendation, the Synod received the report for information noting the appointment of Dr. Melanie Humphreys as the new president of King's University College. I so move.
Moved and supported. Recommendation 1 under 7. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye. Contrary, the same. Is carried.
Recommendation 2, that Synod acknowledge with appreciation the faithful leadership provided by Dr. Harry Fernhow during his 8 years as president of the King's University College. I so move.
Moved and supported. Recommendation 2 under section 7. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye. Contrary, the same. It's carried, and we express our appreciation for King's University College.
With regard to Kuiper College, the recommendation that Synod receive the report for information noting the fact that Kuiper College will be celebrating their 75th anniversary during the academic year of 2013-2014. I so move.
Motion is moved and supported. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Contrary, the same. It is carried. We give thanks for 75 years. It's a significant milestone and a delight to celebrate and give thanks to God for that.
With regard to Redeemer University College, the recommendation that Synod receive the report for information noting the fact that Redeemer celebrated its 30th anniversary during the past academic year of 2012-2013. I so move.
Recommendation is before us and is supported. Any discussion with regard to the recommendation pertaining to Redeemer University College? All in favor, please say aye. Contrary, the same. That is carried. Our thanks and congratulations to Redeemer with 30 years of faithful service.
Trinity Christian College, that Synod receive the report of Trinity Christian College for information. I so move.
Recommendation 1 under section 10, Trinity Christian College, is before us. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Contrary, the same. It's carried.
Recommendation 2, that Synod take note of the appreciation expressed by the college for the financial support that has been received. I so move.
Recommendation is before us. It's been moved and supported. Any discussion of recommendation 2? All in favor, say aye. Contrary, the same. That is carried, and again, we thank God for the blessing of Trinity Christian College.
And then finally, in this section, Timothy Leadership Training Institute, the recommendations, number one, that Synod receive the report for information, noting with appreciation the scope of the work, the strength of its partnerships with the CRCNA, and the impact that it has in developing nations. I so move.
Okay, recommendation 1 in section 11 with regard to Timothy Leadership Training Institute is before you. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, the same. It is carried.
And then finally, that to Synod take note that the director, Mr. Charles Powell, has taken a new position as the regional director for India. I so move.
That final recommendation has been moved and supported. Is there discussion? There is a speaker. Tom?
You have a question. You have to hold the microphone, Tom.
It might end up in Classis Granville.
Thank you, Len.
Thank you.
Name
I
and
know-
classes, Tom.
Oh, Tom Dreyer, and I'm from Classis Rocky Mountain.
Thanks, Tom.
I was privileged to serve as Chuck's pastor in Third Church of Denver. I'm not sure about the new position he's taking, if that is in addition to his directorship. But I just wanted to celebrate Timothy Institute, and I know it's one page in the agenda. We have over 16,000 people being trained around the world in good biblical studies, many of whom would not receive any training in various parts of the world. It's a tremendous program. It was birthed out of the Christian Reformed Church, and I know Chuck is very eager for pastors. If they wanted to spend a 2 or 3 week period of time teaching in parts of the world, he would welcome the interest in that. Councils, if you would like to give your pastor an experience he'll never forget, or she will never forget, this would be a great opportunity. But thank God for the work of Timothy Institute.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Thank you for sharing that. Any further discussion? George?
Rapids East.
Hold the microphone.
George, grab the mic.
Hold the mic.
The recommendation, as it stands in the report, just says that he has taken this new position. I don't think we're recommending that. The reporter said, Senate take note of that, and I wondered if that could be changed in the official record.
Thank you, George. We'll rule that.
I will amend that.
That Synod note. Thank you. Okay. All in favor of this recommendation, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, the same. That is carried. This is a celebration, to reflect on the faithful work of ministry that gets carried out through our academic institutions. Many of us could stand up and give personal testimonies with regard to the institutions where we were trained or where our children have attended. I could tell you that 4 of my children have graduated from Redeemer University. 1 has graduated from Dordt College. I have invested heavily in these institutions, but it's been worth every penny. They have given back to us much more than we have contributed to them. So what a marvelous thing it is. Each and every one of us could talk about those kind of personal connections and family testimonies. We praise God for the academic institutions that help us to work together to be trained and equipped for ministry in every area of life as we bring the claim of Lordship of Jesus Christ to all areas in our world today. What a challenge that is, and what a privilege it is to be part of organizations that do that collaboratively. So our thanks and our praise to God for these institutions that we've recognized this morning.
we let's go back to the very beginning of your report to item 1, Calvin College. Recognize, and maybe if Dr. Leroy and others that are here are ready then to speak, should that be required. But we have a number of recommendations with regard to Calvin College. Okay, and under, so 1C, that Synod ratify the following administrative reappointments to various positions with faculty status, and the italics indicate promotion to that rank. Do you want me to read all these names, Mr. Chairman?
The names have been published already in the agenda for Synod, right?
Right.
There's nothing new here that you need to call attention to?
No, this is just, it's all published there, so I so move those names, 6 names listed.
Okay. That has been moved and supported. The names are before us in recommendation 1 under the material for Calvin College. No one to speak on that. All in favor, please say aye. Contrary, the same. It is carried.
2, that Synod ratify the following reappointments with tenure, and once again the italics indicate, and there are 7 names there of persons who are being reappointed with tenure at the college. I so move.
Okay, the 7 names for tenure are moved and supported. Discussion. Recommendation 2 under section C. Scan those names with appreciation for a moment. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, the same. It's carried.
Recommendation 3, that Synod ratify the change in rank for the following faculty: Joel MP Navarro to Professor of Music. I so move.
Recommendation 3 has been moved and supported. Any discussion on recommendation 3? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, the same. It is carried. Congratulations to Joel Navarro.
Recommendation 4, that Synod give appropriate recognition to the following individuals for service to Calvin College and the Christian Reformed Church, and confer on them the titles presented here. And then you find the names of 7 individuals listed. I so move.
Okay, recommendation 4 is before you, has been moved and supported. It's open for discussion. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, the same. It is carried, again with appreciation for the work of those individuals.
Recommendation 5, that Synod ratify the following faculty with tenure for promotions in rank, and the italics indicate the promotions in rank. There are 6 names listed there, various professors for various disciplines. I so move.
Recommendation 5 is moved and supported. List of faculty being recommended for tenure. All in favor, please say aye. Contrary, same sign. It's acknowledgement of work faithfully performed when tenure is granted. Continue.
Recommendation 6, that Synod ratify the following faculty reappointments with tenure. Italics indicate that promotion in rank, and then there are 3 professors listed there. I so move.
Recommendation 6 has been moved and supported. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Contrary, the same. It's carried with appreciation for their work.
Recommendation 7, that Synod ratify the following faculty reappointments. There are 9 names listed there. You see also in parentheses the tenure or the years of service that is being recommended for each one there. I so move.
Recommendation 7 has been moved and supported with regard to faculty reappointments. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Contrary, the same. It is carried.
Recommendation 8, that Synod ratify the following reappointments of administrators with faculty status. And you'll see there 11 names and their responsibilities or their years of appointment in parentheses at the end. I so move.
Recommendation 8, moved and supported to ratify those reappointments. Discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Contrary, the same. Again, that's carried with our appreciation for their work.
Then finally, recommendation 9, that Synod ratify the following administrative appointments effective as noted, and then you'll see the names of the 4 and when they're effective and what their appointments are for. I so move.
9 is moved and supported. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Contrary, the same. It's carried.
Then, Mr. Chair, the Advisory Committee would like to read the following note. The Advisory Committee would like to acknowledge that President Leroy was very forthcoming when asked about details regarding the recent financial concerns that have been raised about the long-term debt at Calvin College. He supplied us with a 4-page summary of recent findings and the remedial steps that have been taken, as well as long-term plans to address the challenges associated with the situation. It was noted in our committee that the report hadn't mentioned anything about that, and we did want to raise that issue, and Dr. Leroy was very helpful in helping explain it. No doubt the Finance Committee also has more details. We just simply wanted to acknowledge the transparency there.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Reporter, for recognizing that, for acknowledging that, and our appreciation thereby is conveyed to President Leroy. We also realize that there have been some reductions in terms of staff, and it's a good thing to see in what we just did that there still are some staff remaining. But it has been a painful situation in many ways, and we do deeply appreciate the transparency and the way in which these conversations have been conducted and will continue to be a matter of focus here. At this point, we're going to ask that you be seated, and thank you for your work, Mr. Reporter. We will pick up Calvin Theological Seminary at a later point, that's section 2, because at this point, we are going to transition into the presentation from Calvin College. It's a delight to welcome President Leroy here, and the first part of our presentation, I believe, is going to be a video presentation, and then there will be a verbal presentation and perhaps an opportunity for a question or two. So welcome, and we'll just enjoy the video, and then we'll transition into the next part of this presentation. So thank you very much, and enjoy this.
was really good, and you can see it again later if you want to. Thank you to our communications team who put that together, and that gives you a little flavor and overview of what life is like at Calvin College here and what it's been like over the past year. But I want to also give you a sense of the 30,000-foot view, and so the balance of my time I'll spend doing that. I want to start by thanking you and thanking the denomination for its support in prayer and its financial support and all of the encouragements that you give us when you send a student our way to check out Calvin College. We view that as an encouragement that you have confidence and trust in the institution to educate the next generation is tremendous encouragement to us, and so we are grateful. This year, I set about during my first year to assess the state of Calvin College, and I'm going to share those findings with you, and in that context, also share some information about our financial situation. It's not that I don't want to describe that, but talking about that takes another 30 minutes, and what I will do, though, is direct you to resources that we have online at the Calvin College website. The president's homepage has a link on it that says finances, and then we have more information and communication that we issued out to the Calvin Nation of about 70,000 people in March and February as we were making communication about that. I want to put our financial situation in a larger context as we try to understand where does the college find itself at this stage of its history and development. It's important not to just be captive to finances because our mission's far greater than that. Finances are what help us to achieve our mission. They're not the end in itself. And I think sometimes in the past year, I've wanted to be disciplined about our conversation and help people understand the connection of the finances to our mission. We don't exist to make a profit. In other words, I want to draw a contrast there, but not diminish any of what we have been dealing with. So as we set out to assess the state of the college this year, we are in the process right now of undertaking a comprehensive review of all academic programs and services, assessing their alignment with mission and other important indicators of demand and support. We were reviewing all of our resources, our physical assets and our buildings. We're doing things like studying the demand and use of all of our facilities. Before we engage in any other building projects, we need to make sure that we're fully utilizing and engaging in good stewardship with what we have. We also conducted a comprehensive review of our financial situation, our debt situation, prospects for giving and future resources, and so on. We engaged a participatory process over the past year that involved more than 500 people, faculty, staff, students, parents, alums, denominational members, our trustees, our alumni board representatives, and I could go on and on. This process was participatory and designed to surface the key areas of strength that Calvin College has so that we might leverage them for our future, the areas of weakness that we have so that we might bolster and strengthen ourselves, the opportunities that exist in higher education at this point in our history, and the threats that are looming out there. And I'm going to share my findings, our findings, with you, what we came up with in this process. And we will, the goal of doing this assessment, of understanding where we are, is to develop a strategic plan that will carry us through the next 5 years and respond to those strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. We want Calvin College to have a clear vision and a clear direction so that we can continuously articulate to you what our goals are and let you know how we're performing. And so that's what you can expect from us next year when we have an opportunity to issue a report to you as well. Our analysis and review yielded the following strengths that I'd like to share with you. First of all, the institution's commitment to a reformed Christian faith, to integrate the heart and mind dimensions of that faith with rigorous intellectual inquiry, with good teaching and excellent learning for all of us who are engaged in this community. That's a clear strength of Calvin College and something that we will continue to seek to leverage. We also learned by external validation and quantitative indicators about our reputation for excellent teaching and research that is marked by academic rigor and close faculty-student collaboration. There are a number of indicators of this. One, I'll just point to you. Last year, there was a national survey done that identified the top professors in 300 disciplines across the country. Calvin College had 4 of those 300 disciplines covered by 4 of its faculty. A remarkable accomplishment in the largest number of disciplines in the state of Michigan by any higher education institution, which is pretty significant given that we've got some heavy hitters in town. And I could give you a number of other external indicators that we felt were important to validate. It's not appropriate in my mind to just proclaim that you're good. You better be measuring it, and you better be able to demonstrate it on the basis of evidence. The competence of our faculty and staff. We identify a number of areas where our competence really exceeds that of what we would expect given what we are capable of paying, and we're very pleased with that competence. Our engagement, faculty, staff, and students around the corner and around the world. You saw some of the data points on that in the presentation before you, but engagement with the community and engagement around the world is a key ingredient of what it means to be an educated Calvin student, and that continues to be a strength. Strong partnership on our campus between academic affairs and student life. This is critical because we seek to educate the whole person, and students who are preparing to go into the classroom come to the class with a lot of concerns and needs and issues, and student life is there to support and encourage them to make sure that they're emotionally and physically and spiritually well prepared to engage the learning enterprise, and we're grateful for that partnership. And then finally, you're enjoying one of many of our well-designed and maintained facilities. We appreciate that and we value that, and there's been a huge commitment to having excellent facilities, and we view that as a strength for ourselves. And there are many others I could go on, but I'll stop there because these were ones that were identified as primary in the process I just described. We also have identified a number of weaknesses that are important for us. We recognize that our current operating finances and our debt structure were not sufficient to the task if we continued along the same course, and that we were going to have to do a number of things in order to be well prepared and positioned for the future. And I'll just give you an idea of 5 strategies that we're undertaking and designing right now to respond to that situation. First, we're designing a fundraising program that's going to have a short window to it, but we get an idea where our top donors are in terms of their commitment to helping us with the debt situation. We've been in dialogue with them and been very open and transparent about that reality, and many of them have said we want to help, and we want to be able to be sure that the help that they give is going to help to remedy the situation. We're looking at revenue growth. We still have capacity to house more students and teach more students here, and we have had a very good year in admissions, and we hope to continue that strength and grow our revenue by growing our enrollment. Thirdly, expense reduction. Was mentioned earlier that we have engaged in a round of expense reduction in anticipation of this coming year's budget. We were able to do that by contracting out putting out for bid several of our services like health insurance that resulted in significant savings, but we've also had to reduce the number of employees here, and that is always a challenging and difficult situation when one has to do that. We have more than 750 employees. We took 17 reductions by attrition, that is retirements and openings that we did not fill, but we did have to make 5 involuntary layoffs, and those were very, very difficult indeed. We also are looking at all of our debt and assets and trying to identify how best we might restructure those things. So how do we refinance debt? In what ways should we look at our real estate assets that we hold and sell those off in ways that are appropriate that also preserve the value of those assets, which is challenging in this market and in this time. Another weakness for us that was self-identified, was that over time, as Calvin College, which for decades was self-identified by many alums and those who attended here as a liberal arts college, we've now moved into a position where 47% of our degrees granted were to students in professional programs. And so the mix of liberal arts and professional programs incrementally has changed over time such that it's almost a 50-50 split. And so we are asking questions about our academic identity. It doesn't seem as though it's totally valid to say that we're a liberal arts college anymore, or exclusively such. And so we're having to think through, what do we want our identity to be? Where are we going? What is the vision that we want to have academically in terms of the mix of programs, including programs like graduate programs and service to other student groups that might exist out there in West Michigan or anywhere in the world, given the capabilities of technology these days. We also learned that we need to improve our patterns of decision-making and governance, and those include many aspects of areas of needed improvement. We need to be speedier and more responsive. We need to be nimble. We need to be evidence-based. We need to understand ourselves well rather than acting on the basis of anecdotes. We need to be more participatory and include more people. We also need to communicate very clearly when decisions are coming and then what they are once we have made them. That has influenced everyone from the board down to how we interact with students. And there are significant changes that are taking place on the Board of Trustees in terms of structure and accountability and this sort of thing to improve governance and decision-making at that level, but also at the administrative level. Just one example I'll give you of those changes would be the addition of faculty advisors appointed by me to the committees that serve the Board of Trustees. Those advisors will provide a kind of information resource. They're non-voting members, they're not trustees, but they are there to be a resource and enhance and improve communication between the board and faculty, as one example. We also recognize that we have these great facilities and we're going to have to do a lot to maintain them. And so a weakness for us is the operational finance and support of the facilities as they depreciate and need repair and that sort of thing. We don't want to get to a point where they're desperately in need of repair and we're trying to catch up. We're trying to keep up as we go. And so we're realigning our operational resources to take account of that as well. We recognize that our instructional costs appear to be out of alignment when we benchmark them against similar institutions and the tuition price that we charge. And so our instructional costs seem relatively high, given that our tuition price is pretty much in the middle. Staying price-wise in the middle is a good thing, but when your costs are exceeding that, that's a challenge for us. So we're needing to understand that better and try to identify the reasons for that and improve. And then finally, another area of weakness that we have opportunity to improve in is the gap in diversity. You saw evidence there. Overall, looks like this coming year, 25% of our student body will be either international or domestic diverse students. The most common name at Calvin for decades was DeVries. Now the most common name at Calvin College is Kim. That's a reflection of the change in the composition of the student population and the composition of the college. Our faculty and staff diversity composition is in the range of 5 to 7% and has stayed there for a very long time. We seem to be capable of attracting diverse candidates, but we are challenged at times to keep them, and we recognize that we really need to improve the retention and recruitment of a diverse faculty and staff so that students can say, there's someone that looks like me doing something that I might do someday. That's very important. Now, there's a number of opportunities that we have in this context as well, significant opportunities for us, and I'm right on time. That's good. This is an exciting time, actually, to be in higher education. There's tremendous change going on, and we are privileged to have a strong brand and a strong national identity in this time. So how do we want to use that? Well, we've got to ask ourselves, what's our role in serving populations of students outside of our traditional 18 to 22-year-old demographic? Do we have graduate programs, non-traditional programs that might serve underemployed people here in West Michigan? Should we add programs that are increasingly popular for prospective students, so-called 4+1 or 4+2 programs where students get a bachelor's degree and a master's degree? Those are questions that are before us that we need to ask. How do we leverage the connection between liberal arts programs in our institution and professional programs at the college? I think, one of the things that we recognize that could happen if we didn't monitor it is that those in professional programs might feel underappreciated and undervalued, and those in the liberal arts areas might feel threatened by the growth in professional programs. So instead of being divided, by these trends? How can we be united? And there's an interesting model of higher education that we're reviewing right now. It's called the New American College and University model. When you look at the characteristics and traits of those institutions, we have about 80 to 90% of those characteristics and traits, everything from size to program mix and so on. So that's something we're looking at to help us to give us a sense of vision for the future. How do we continue to proactively make the case for Calvin's Reformed Christian education? This is a great gift. It's a great gift to those who've grown up in the tradition, and it's a tremendous gift we know and are finding to those that have not grown up in this tradition. We recruit students all the time who come here, and in their third or fourth year, as I've been having lunch with them, they say something to me like, I had no idea this was out there. I felt like if I wanted to pursue science, I had to keep my faith under a bushel. Calvin's given me a way to think faithfully about what it means to be someone in science. This is a great gift. How do we give that gift to more and more students? So one of the opportunities here for us is to now realize that more than 50% of our matriculating students don't find Calvin or don't know Calvin because their relatives went here or because they always grew up knowing about it. They find Calvin College because they put the term engineering and Christian college into Google and get back Calvin College as a name. And so they come knowing very little about the Reformed faith. Their faith is often very sincere and it's experiential, but they've not had the intellectual formation and development that we know can come from an education like this. So we're excited about the opportunity to educate these students. And we have to recognize that some of the ways that we communicate about who we are going to have to change so that we don't assume so much. And so that's an opportunity for us going forward as well. In collaboration also, another opportunity with partners around the globe and here in Michigan, in our denomination and outside of it, there are a host of new opportunities for us to more effectively serve and to make sure that Calvin College education is reaching a large number of people. And so our partnerships, we know, are going to be critical to us going forward. And then finally, in the area of teaching and learning, there's a ton that's happening. We have learned so much in the last 10 years about the neuroscience of teaching and learning. In fact, one of the things that we know is the worst thing that you can do to help people learn something is to do exactly what I'm doing right now. Stand up and give a lecture to you for 20 minutes. Yeah, some of you laughed because you were paying attention, and the rest that weren't, it's totally understandable because neuroscientifically it makes sense that you tune out after about 10 minutes. So what do we know? What we know from neuroscience should inform the ways that we teach, and we should do less stand and deliver and much more interaction. So we've got to rethink classrooms and redesign what we do pedagogically, and that's an exciting opportunity for us going forward. Technology and mobile learning continues to advance. This is not a new thing. In fact, when I started my professorial career in 1994, that's when online learning, that's when that term started to become common. And what's been interesting is that even then everybody thought it was going to make professors and colleges obsolete. It hasn't happened as quickly as people are thinking, but we can't ignore the dynamic change that technology is introducing to our environments. And that leads us to some of our threats. And we choose not to be afraid of these threats, but we want to be aware of them. And we want to respond to them, not in a way that sticks our head in the sand, but in a way that moves directly toward them. First and most significant threat, and this probably hasn't changed in a long time, but it's very important to us, is the competitiveness of the U.S. higher education environment. It's an extremely competitive environment. In the Midwest, you can throw a rock and hit a college somewhere, and that continues to be challenging, and higher ed is becoming more and more and more differentiated with different kinds of degrees offered all the time. And so that's challenging in an environment where, especially in the Midwest, there's this demographic decline of 18-year-olds. There aren't as many as there used to be, and we can't make more. It's going to take us 18 years to make more. So that's a challenge. Our costs are a challenge. Residential colleges are significant, are costly. And what's working for us right now is that in our culture, it's generally viewed as the way to go out in the world and seek your vocation and fortune is to go live outside the home. As somebody who has had an 18-year-old living outside the home, we're quite excited to send her out now. She's ready to go. And lots of parents feel that way still. Most parents still don't want their son or daughter learning in the basement on the computer and living at home from 18 to 22. Most parents still want them to be out there, but how long will that last? And that's a challenge for us. Another challenge is the view that higher education is just simply reducible to credits that you can purchase anywhere. That's called the commodification of education. But we know, and we need to make the case, that an education like a Calvin College education is more than just credits. It's about the question of who will make us wise. And we believe that God uses colleges and universities to form the character, form the mind, form the heart, and form the hands that are to go out into this world and transform it. We've got to make that case, and we've got to be able to demonstrate that the value added by this experience is significantly different than the value added by a mediated technological education price for credit. But that's not as easy a sell as it used to be. Another challenge for us is the declining numbers of baptisms in the CRC and the enrollments in the Christian schools, which continue to be relatively low. If you go back the last 18 to 20 years, there are only 3,000 or so baptisms in the denomination. That's a stark contrast from where it was in the 60s with about 16,000 baptisms. So that's a challenge for us who look at the pipeline. Now, the good news in all of that is that as those numbers for us, we still get the same percentage of those baptisms. It's been very stable at Calvin. But as those numbers have declined, we have been drawing in more and more students from outside those traditions who come and find Calvin and in the ways that I was describing. Another challenge for us is the business model of higher education. How long can this be sustained? And it's a industry that really punishes people that are institutions that try to deviate from it. I just give one anecdote to you from a person from Linden, Washington, who knew me from Whitworth, was out here visiting with their daughter, and they had visited Whitworth. And out west, the colleges, actually, the tuition price is about $8,000 higher than it is here, $8,000 higher. And it was fascinating, and so I'm thinking, this is a good selling point. And the parents say, what's wrong with Calvin? Is it not as good a quality as Whitworth, where you came from? Tell us, kind of in. And I said, why do you say that? What? They said, well, it's cheap relative. And I said, wasn't that a good thing? Well, that maybe is an expression of lower quality in the minds of that group. So that's a huge problem for us, is that, wait, we thought that was a good value. But what's fascinating is that there's a market perception among those who are sending their students off to college that higher sticker price means higher value. And so the market actually punishes behavior where you try to reduce your price, and there's several colleges that have experimented with giving less scholarship aid and lowering their prices. And what happens is that a student gets $2,000 in scholarship aid from a $16,000 college, and they think that's not nearly as good as getting a $10,000 scholarship from a $30,000 college. Now, they haven't worked the math through as well as they need to, but that's what we're up against, is that many kids like to say, I got a $10,000 scholarship. And so it's a very strange business model, and we've got some challenges there in addressing it. And then finally, the retention of a diverse faculty and staff. We see the way the world is changing demographically, and we need to be prepared for it, to serve it well. And serving it well means serving our students well. So I'll just end with this last point. And thank you for the time. What we are going to do with the identifications of these strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats is form 6 to 8 goals that will influence the direction and vision of the college going forward. And we will be sharing those goals by electronic means in the early fall for all Calvin supporters to respond to and give feedback. And we extend formally that invitation to the denomination as well, and look forward to your participation. We're also going to have a short lunch that's a strategy session about how we continue to invigorate and even renew the covenant relationship between the denomination and the college, which we're excited to enjoy. That's been a lunch by sign-up, and those of you that have signed up, we have more than 60, I think, on the list. We'd love to see you there. And I will stop my comments now and take any questions that you might have, and I know we're on a tight time schedule. But that's an overview, and I thank you for your time.
President Leroy, thank you very much for that speech. It's not always that a president's speech is spellbinding, but you held our attention through the whole thing. It was excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You not only shared the joys, the highlights, and you gave us many things to celebrate, but you were also very transparent about some of the challenges, and we appreciate that. That's very healthy, that you have not glossed over those. You've laid them out in good faith, recognizing that as a community we need to work on those together and address those together. And so thank you so much for both sides of your speech, the celebrations as well as the challenges. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
And we're going to open the floor for a question or two or an observation. We're pretty well at the end of our session, and we want to stay on target. But if there's something that's on your heart that's kind of a burning question or a comment, we will accommodate a speaker or two. Okay, well, many of us have signed up, I think, for that dialogue over lunch, and we're very much anticipating that, looking forward to it. And once again, our deepest appreciation for your presence here and for the depth of your speech. You packed an awful lot of information into that speech and kept our attention through the whole thing, so well done. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bill. All right, thank you.
We're going to be closing this session with our prayer. There are a number of matters that are on our agenda, obviously, as we will reconvene at 1:15. And there are a couple of matters that we've already announced. There's one matter to complete with regard to Advisory Committee 3, the Calvin Seminary matter, so we'll want to do that this afternoon. We're going to also take a look at Advisory Committee 2 and turn our attention to that. So those will be on the order of the day after lunch. And there are a number of presentations that are lined up. They, I think, have already been announced in our materials in advance. So we look forward to another exciting afternoon of activities, some deliberations, and considerable presentation of matters that we can take note of and celebrate together. Don't know if there are any other announcements that I need to make, anything that other officers or our staff want to call to our attention. Otherwise, we're going to invite Sheila Holmes to come forward to a mic and to lead us in a closing prayer as we end this morning's session. Sheila, welcome. Sheila is the president-elect of the Board of Trustees, and the president-elect usually thinks they don't have to do anything or get to do anything until after Synod, but we're putting her to work already right now, and Sheila, it's an absolute delight to welcome you here.
Thank you. Would you pray with me? Dear Heavenly Father, as we come before you, we thank you for your graciousness to us. Thank you for your grace and mercy that are new every day. As we even heard from our president of Calvin College, Dr. Leroy, we thank you for him, and we thank you for the work that is being done in this institution that you continue to keep using in a mighty way. We thank you for all the institutions that we even discussed this morning, and that we ask that you will just continue to bless, and that you will also continue to challenge, that we may not stay as we are, but we may continue to grow in faith. We thank you for the ministries that are done and for the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people all across the Christian Reformed Church in North America that are doing ministry. And that, Lord, that you will continue to use each one of us to share the good news of Jesus Christ. Whether it's far or whether it's near, there's always someone who does not know. And that, Lord, you have called us to be able to be your witnesses because your Holy Spirit has moved us to the place of walking with you. And so, Lord, as we continue to be used by you to minister to one another, we ask that you will just continue to be with the delegates and give us wisdom and guidance. But as we go to lunch, we ask that you will also not only feed us physically, but feed us spiritually, as we fellowship with one another. And that, Lord, that you will feed us mentally as we think upon the things that you call for us to do, that we may be guided by your Spirit. And to you, all things be glory, honor, and praise. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.